When I say financial straits, I mean it. He had only $755 in his bank account, but he owed $19,000, nearly $20,000 in credit card debt alone. In his retirement plan, I think he had maybe $7,000 left. His landlord, he had no home anymore, as in a mortgage, but he had now rented for the past 6 months before he went missing. His landlord says he was having increasingly difficult hardship financially, was finding it harder and harder to meet even his rent payment. And then just before he goes missing, he gets a double whammy. Not only does he no longer have a home, he's renting, but now a judge orders him to pay $8,000 of back child support. That means he's a deadbeat dad. To top it all off, he's not even paying his child support.
Well, first of all, he left all his stuff on the boat. He left a bag with his passport and his wallet. Also, about a week later, or a couple of weeks later, when people finally realized that he was missing because he didn't show up at a family function, they started looking for him, and they found his car at a landing area near where the boat had docked. So he wanted, if he is alive, to make it look like he was missing because he left everything behind, never called and said, hey, I left my tackle box, I left my passport, I left my wallet. So either he fell overboard, which some say now appears increasingly unlikely, or he left it all to make it look like he was dead and took off to avoid those payments.
And of course, no body or even clothing, none of his belongings have washed ashore or have been found. Joining us now, dock manager of the 22nd Street Landing, Frank Liver's Edge. Sir, thank you for being with us. In a nutshell, what happened the day McDermott went missing?
Well, the day, I didn't find out he was missing until 2 weeks after he was supposedly missing.
Okay. What happened the day he went missing?
Well, the day that his wife called me up on the telephone and asked me if we knew anything about him, and we knew nothing. We started checking records, and she gave me his vehicle license plate number and so forth. We found some stuff that had been turned into the office. I opened it up. I went through it. I found his wallet and other papers in there. I did not find a passport. That's an error. His passport was not in that bag. They found his passport at his house. But a lot of other papers and stuff was in the fanny pack that he had.
What kind of papers?
Along with some fishing tackle.
What kind of papers?
To be absolutely honest with you, I did not go any farther than looking in his wallet. I went through the wallet. I asked the lady on the telephone if I had permission to go through the wallet. I opened it up. There was no folding money in the wallet. His driver's license was in there, and that's as far as I went. The police have a complete report. They sat in here at my desk and went through the whole wallet and itemized everything that was in there, but I didn't go any further than just to look at his driver's license and stuff.
With us, the dock manager, Frank Liver's Edge. Frank, were you there at the dock the day the boat came back in from the fishing trip?
I was here the morning, but not in the evening. The boat doesn't come back in until about 8 o'clock at night. I was not here at that time.
So at that time, no one considered him missing. He wasn't reported missing, so there was no cause for concern.
Absolutely not. None at all.
Frank, I understand that 2 of your employees have been gagged from talking to the media. Who gagged them?
The lawyer did.
A lawyer gagged them?
Yeah, we had to hire a lawyer for the boat.
Okay, wait. Only a court has the ability to gag someone from speaking. So the lawyer simply told them not to speak, correct?
Right, the same as he's done to all the crew. That's the reason everyone's been talking to me, because I'm the only one they can't tell to shut up, I guess.
Question, were your employees asked to testify in front of a grand jury?
No.
Robbie, do you believe that this is a case of another Wilbanks, a Jennifer Wilbanks?
It's slightly different. I mean, Jennifer Wilbanks claimed that she was abducted, so she was crying out for help and attention and basically emotionally felt like she was being abducted. In this case, we have somebody who has looming debt and responsibilities and is trying to avoid it and appear like he's moved on to the afterlife when in fact it looks like he just has moved on.
Let's talk about and identify the last time we can absolutely place Patrick McDermott alive and well. It was June 30, 2005. He was on a fishing junket, just an overnight trip, as I mentioned before. It was a relatively small group. There were 23 passengers and 5 crewmen, 28 people in all. Now remember, this was only for a few hours. You go out, you fish, you spend the night, you fish, you come back. One crew member said that McDermott was very upbeat, was cracking jokes, was having a good time. Another passenger says that McDermott was downcast the whole time, was complaining bitterly, and with a tinge of sadness about his ex-wife and his current condition in life. So it really ran the gamut of emotions about what you get from the crew people and from the passengers, how they say McDermott responded, what was his demeanor on that trip. And it's also important to know that he didn't know anyone. He had never met the captain before, none of the crew people, none of the passengers. He was completely anonymous on that fishing trip.
The mere fact that I think they needed to follow up, if there is an investigator on this case, to find out what he did before he got on that boat and what his plans were and who he dealt with and who he talked to, that may lead him to where he is right now.
Now, the very latest is that we are hearing that there have been 3, possibly 4 reported sightings of Patrick McDermott in Mexico on the Baja Peninsula.
Whoa. 4 sightings?
Up to 4 separate sightings, that's what we're hearing. Now, 2 people in a bar and a 3rd person who was working in a surf camp have identified...
Working in a what?
A surf camp. He runs surf safaris.
Surf camp. Got it. Okay, go ahead.
Right. So they have all identified McDermott from a photograph, and they've looked at it and they have said, yes, they believe they've seen him, some as recently as 10 days ago. But the problem here is that these are unsubstantiated reports, and what seems to have happened is that there is a reporter who has gone down to Cabo San Lucas with a photograph of Patrick McDermott, and he's asking the locals, have you seen this man? 3 or 4 people have said, yes, you know, we think we have seen him, but there may have been 300 who have said no. It's hearsay, essentially, you know, a story that gets bigger and bigger each time it's told, and sort of grows legs and seems to have more credibility when really these leads appear to be going nowhere. I spoke to one of the supposed witnesses, and he said that no, actually he hadn't seen Patrick McDermott himself, but he knew of someone who thought he may have. So there are some pretty serious credibility issues with these reported sightings.
Now, this is very interesting. This overnight fishing trip ended, and everyone was getting ready to get off the fishing ship. As they neared land, within 30 minutes of setting shore, everybody had to pay up their bill. That day, McDermott had ordered 2 hot dogs and a Coke. His bill was $5. Everybody had been given a number. He was number 2. His order was number 2. His bill was paid. So he was on that fishing boat 30 minutes before it went back to shore. Now, the way that you paid for your lunch is that you would go downstairs to the kitchen or the bar area and you'd pay the cook. The cook did not recall McDermott paying. Did somebody else pay for him? Wouldn't that have been uncovered by now? It never has been. There were only 23 passengers. Nobody has said they paid for McDermott. But his bill was paid in the last 30 minutes before that ship, the Freedom, coincidentally, got to shore. So common logic places him alive and well 30 minutes before the boat lands.
Well, he filed for bankruptcy. We've pinned documents that he filed for bankruptcy 5 years ago. He was paying child support of $800 a month to his ex-wife. She went back to court in April asking that he make payments directly to the court, which would raise the assumption that perhaps she wasn't receiving all of her checks.
She's an actress, right?
She's an actress.
She came to the scene, right?
She contacted the folks at the harbor, and it was her call that prompted them to look at his belongings and find out who it belonged to and so forth. But you know, it's hard, as you just heard. There are more questions really than answers. This is an odd case. We've covered missing persons cases before. Usually the authorities are very forthcoming and they say this is the car he was driving, this is a license plate. We haven't really received that kind of information from the Coast Guard, and I know that they're doing their best to find this person. They're treating this as a missing persons investigation, not a homicide at this point.
Anything that they're holding back, Scott Epperson?
A lot of stuff, or any information that is releasable from the investigation has been released to this point. Some things are, you know, within the realms of the investigation, and they're not going to talk about them at this time. And then I don't even have that information.
What's the interest in Australia, Christine?
There's huge interest. You know, Olivia really holds a very special place in the hearts of Australians. You know, people have followed her career for now more than 30 years. It's almost hard to believe because she's still so youthful looking, and she's very Australian. She goes back home a lot, so there is that connection there.
She's there now, right?
I understand she's actually in America. She's out of Los Angeles. She left her Malibu home once the story broke over the weekend, but she does have a home in Australia, so that is a base that she can always go to.
We don't know where she is right now.
Right, and there's actually a good point Christy makes. The distance in the relationship, that's another reason why you say, why didn't she report this sooner? She, as I understand it, may spend as much as 6 months a year in Australia, 6 months here. So while she and Patrick had a committed relationship, it was not necessarily a traditional relationship where you see each other all the time.
Now, interesting, the boat docks at 7 p.m. There is not a single passenger that can recall McDermott getting off the ship, the Freedom. Up to this point in time, 21 of the 23 passengers and all of the crew people have been interviewed. Now, there's 23 passengers. 21 have been interviewed. 22 would be McDermott himself. There's only one passenger that has not been interviewed that was on that boat, the Freedom, that day that McDermott went on a fishing trip. None of them can place McDermott leaving. And it just so happens that this particular fishing boat had no procedure to make sure that it was so small to make sure that everybody got on the boat, got off the boat. In fact, what they used as documentation was the bar and food tab. And McDermott did pay his bar and food tab. At least it was paid. That's a better way to say it. Nobody can remember him actually paying it, but it was paid. Nobody on that fishing boat can remember McDermott getting off. There's no evidence he ever left the boat.